So since every meme has unhealthy expression, I'm wondering what unhealthy yellow and unhealthy turquoise look like.
Sure. There are two different types of sort of unhealthy at any stage. And one is at whatever stage you're at, you can deny elements at that stage. Or possibly a lower stage. But there's something about whatever stage you're at that you're uncomfortable with. And the reason that happens is until there is some sort of radical realization. And it's never an all or nothing. It's never a one-time thing. But the more there is realization, the more there's recognition of big mind, big heart, the more there's recognition of the non-seeking mind, the more there's recognition of pure, non-dual awareness. Then the more the self-contraction relaxes. And the more that happens, the faster movement through the stages can occur. But there's still, prior to something that we might call sort of mostly really fully enlightened, because there's just no such thing as fully enlightened. It's like saying somebody's fully educated. What does that mean? It's an ongoing process. But there's more or less enlightened. There's some very enlightened people and some not so enlightened people. But perfectly enlightened doesn't have a whole lot of meaning in an ongoing, unfolding kind of way. But as you get more enlightened, the self-contraction relaxes more. And you get less of what I'm about to talk about, which is repression. So it tends to be much greater at first tier. It's very strong at red and blue. It's very strong at blue. Blue is the premier. It represses red impulses. That's just sort of its main business. And if it does it the wrong way, and we can go through 1, 2, 3, or 3, 2, 1, or that kind of thing. But if it does it the wrong way, then it creates all these classic Freudian symptoms. You're splitting off sex, you're splitting off aggression, you're splitting off power drives, all that kind of stuff. But that can happen all the way up, as long as there's anything resembling a self-contraction to whatever degree, because the boundary of the self is fear. And now, the self has a function to perform in these earlier stages, so don't worry about that too much. But whatever stage you're at, you can practice relaxing the self into ever-present suchness or awareness. But nonetheless, it's going to come back. You might have noticed. Okay. So when that happens, whenever there is fear, then anything that threatens you can be sealed out. And so at yellow, just even the fact that you're at yellow doesn't mean that you're free of that. And there could be impulses at yellow that you're not comfortable with. And so you can seal those off, repress those, make shadow elements out of that. And that is, and what that tends to create is a type of awareness that sort of jams up when it could be very open and more systematic. And there's a little bit of fear about that, so it cringes. And there are any number of other things that can go wrong. We can sort of explore those. But that's sort of what you think of as horizontal. Same with turquoise. And they repress slightly different things, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But there's less of that at yellow and turquoise than there is at first tier. And that's because Claire Graves found really one of two major things that happened with people that got into second tier. And you read his original research, he was really astonished as he kept coming up with these responses in second tier. They were so different from first tier. And one of them is that for the first time, people that were starting to give what we would now call yellow, turquoise, vision logic responses, intuitively understood that all of the values of the first tier were important. The definition of first tier is, if you're at a first tier level, you think your value is the only real values anywhere in the world. And everybody else is well-intentioned and deeply psychotic. So, green hates orange, orange thinks green is woo-woo and silly, blue thinks they're all going to burn in hell, red doesn't like any of them. And so that, it's that kind of thing. All of a sudden, yellow, Don Beck calls yellow the universal donor, because it doesn't have to like everything in first tier, but it's okay with it. And I think it's because second tier is the beginning body-mind dropped. Because every level is a little bit more disidentifying, including embracing, but disidentifying, letting go of. By the time you get to second tier, you've done so much of that you really are starting to let body-mind drop. And so you really are much more comfortable with this ever-present suchness that's neither inside nor outside. And it's very hard. There are no defenses then. There's nothing that threatens big mind. because there's nothing outside of it that can run into it and give it a bruise. So that's a good thing to know about big minds. Yeah, I think so. So there's probably escaped Genpo, so you want to pass that along. Yeah, I think he's. The second thing that Claire Grace found is that fear drops off dramatically in second tier. Same reason, probably. You're less identified. And you'll never be fully not identified with this. That's not the point. You're supposed to, we're talking, the last time we were, 2 days ago, we were talking about, in big mind, how do you express impulses? Well, you express them as an expression of spirit. So your intentionality becomes like a wave in the ocean, an expression of that ever-present fullness or radiance. It doesn't go away. It becomes a performance of it, an expression of it. So fear dropped off dramatically, which means repression drops off. So you get less of that, but it doesn't go away. And the second type of pathology that they both face is any level, no matter how sort of open it is afraid of the level above it. Because that's the real threat now. That's what can threaten death. And so there are two different types of threats to yellow or turquoise, and both of them will repress it. They'll get involved in an actual contracting against it. And one is as a higher stage starts to emerge, and the other is as a higher state impinges on it. And that can happen, at lower levels as well. Green, for example, as soon as an integral impulse starts to emerge, if it's not ready to let go, or if it's in a culture that won't let it, green will actively fight and resist integral ideas, its own integral impulses, in its own mind. Yellow impulses will be repressed by green. Well, yellow can do the same thing with turquoise, and turquoise can do the same thing with blue. So it gets less and less, but it never ever goes away. And one of the other things I'll mention, it's not quite pathology at those levels, but one of the things we see most often is that lower pathologies, because fear is relaxed, then those little subpersonalities that were really sealed off, those little buggers start popping up. And that makes meditation a lot of fun. It's that little extra special treat you get about a year or two into that, and you think you're doing fine, and then that subpersonality where you murdered 20 nuns in your previous life, it sort of comes jumping up, and you get to deal with that. But those are the two major kinds of pathologies, and they do occur. Yeah.